When you say freedom, what do you mean? Because there are different definitions of freedom. Or from the point of view of a couple of guys who inherited a multi-million-dollar oil company from daddy, freedom means being able to extract as much money as they want out of that company, being able to have that company dump as much pollution as they want into the air and not pay for it. I mean, that's the essence of their financial argument, right? So freedom from a billionaire's point of view means freedom from government interfering in their attempt to extract more profit out of the rest of us, basically. So when right-wingers, keep in mind, and this is a really important point. I don't mean this as a glib talking point or bumper sticker. This is a fact. There are two kinds of people in the Republican Party. There are rich people, and there are suckers. The rich people know what they're all about with the Republican Party. They know that if they can cut back on resources going to working class and middle class people, that there's more money left over for tax cuts for rich people. They know that if they can cut back on health care or education being provided to working class people, that working class people will find it harder and harder to compete with the offspring of these rich families, and they'll have it easier and easier. It's harder and harder for working class people for their kids to even get into college, much less pay for it. So freedom from the point of view of a billionaire is one very specific thing that's quite different from freedom from the point of view of a working class person. I mean, as a working class person, what are the things that are necessary for you to feel free? More than half of all divorces in this country come about as a consequence of people having economic distress in their marriage. It's the most common cause of divorce in the United States. It's also tied, these economic problems are tied to child abuse, spousal abuse, suicide. There's this whole spectrum of stuff. And one of the things that we know is that the more aggressively conservative policies are applied in a country, whether it's Australia, the United Kingdom, or the United States, studies have been done in all three places, the more aggressive you get Reaganomics and Thatcheronomics being applied, the more you destroy the social safety net for the middle class and the working class and strengthen the amount of money going to those at the very top, the top 1% or 1/100th of 1%. The more you do that, the more you jack up the level of suicide in a society. You increase the level of crime in a society. You increase the mental illness in society. You increase the level of teenage pregnancy rates, of drug abuse, of child abuse. I mean, you go through the list. All these negative outcomes, they're all associated with growing inequality. And the positive outcomes in society tend to be associated with growing equality rather than inequality. In fact, earlier I was sharing with you SemDem's piece, a tale of three states: California, Kansas, and Florida. Kansas is going to help because the Republicans have imposed austerity. California doing really great because Jerry Brown has imposed good governance. At the very end of this, SemDem writes, I am told by my brainwashed conservative friends that California is terrible, but I don't see boarded up storefronts in San Francisco. I see everyone with a living wage and health care. I see carefree and happy, which are two words that are never used to describe Kansas, or since 2010 in Rick Scott's election, they're not used to describe Florida either. So what do we do about this? Going forward, how do we wake people up to the fact that this libertarian economic ideology, which is promoted by the right, which is extraordinarily advantageous and helpful for really, truly rich people, and is actually destructive to working class people, how do we get the word out? Have you ever said to a Republican, hey, in the Republican Party, there's only two kinds of people, rich people and suckers? I guess you'd have to ask, which are you? Or are you a Republican and you think that I'm crazy? Are you a Republican and you can identify a time and place where austerity has actually produced prosperity? Because I don't know of any country in the history of the world cutting their way to prosperity. To the best of my knowledge, it has never happened. And it certainly is not happening in the United States, in these states that are being run by these Republicans and these libertarians. It certainly has not happened. So my argument this morning on this radio show that I was a guest on was that freedom means one thing to billionaires and another thing to working people, and that what it means to working people, and I asked this a little earlier, what would you need to feel free? Right? I spent much of my life feeling free in the United States. And it's because, and I think, looking back on it, I wasn't even thinking about this stuff at the time, and I was not all that self-conscious, back in the 70s and the 80s. But I felt free, A, because I was white in America and, fairly smart and able to function, number one. And number two, because I was an entrepreneur. I was starting my own businesses. I was the boss. I ran the businesses. And number three, because I made a fair amount of money. I mean, that's what it takes to feel free in this country. I think my dad felt free because he had a union job. He was making the equivalent of $40 or $50 an hour in today's money. He was able to raise a family, and I just. So, what does it take to feel free in this country? What Franklin Roosevelt proposed in his second Bill of Rights speech was that for working people to feel free, they have to know that they and their children's education is taken care of, that they and their children's health care is taken care of, that their need for a job, if capitalism fails, will not be the thing that throws them into the poorhouse. In other words, that the government will always provide a job. The government will be the employer of last resort. That a job is you're entitled to. And housing, that if you're homeless, we'll find a place for you. We are the richest country on earth. We have more empty houses in America than we have homeless people. Why don't we put the two of them together? Oh, that's right, Republicans. I forgot.